This week's topic of discussion: do hot people deserve basic empathy? Arguing in the affirmative is Lana es una puta, author of the worst seller BBL LLC. Arguing in the negative is BB insert last name here, the quote proud unquote recipient of Craigslist's Least Bangable Woman award. Ladies, begin.
Okay, so let's start when I was a child. I was envious of my friends growing up because they needed braces and glasses, and whenever they would go to school, they would get ridiculed daily. That never happened to me. So I felt like I missed like an integral part of my childhood because I wanted to experience the so-called bullying everyone was complaining about. And then, once I hit puberty, I lost all my friends. All the girls hated me because their boyfriends just wanted to like stare at me all the time, and they just felt like anytime they looked at me, I gave their worthless lives meaning. I don't know, something like that. Because of that, I have standards I need to uphold, okay? People expect the best. I can't walk out of my house wearing sweats because then I would no longer be seen as like a potential trophy wife, but as like a potential like mother of three. I mean, it's really hard being a walking sex symbol, okay? When I go to get my teeth cleaned, I'm lucky if the dentist doesn't jizz his pants the moment I say ah. One time I was feeling really generous because anytime I go into my local grocery store, they ask if I'd like to donate $1 to the children's like animal hospital or whatever. And I always say, why would I? Because if these kids survive, they're gonna go out into the real world thinking life is full of free handouts, and I'd be doing them a disservice. But my psychic told me that I had really bad karma coming my way. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll date what looks to be the very product of incest to help balance out the scale. So of course, we go out to dinner. The first thing someone says is, if he's here, who's ringing the bell of Notre Dame? I mean, that kind of embarrassment, you can't even imagine, okay? They wheeled out a high chair for him at the table, which like in hindsight, he did actually need, but they all stood around and laughed as like his little feet dangled underneath the table. And then when he ordered soup, they poured it on his head. And like, honestly, it was really humiliating for me. People don't realize how hard it is on the soul to be seen with like the uglies, okay? But I hope that after all of this, you will come to see that those of us who are well above average actually suffer daily, and you guys are the lucky ones. Okay. I rest my case.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, Miss whatever your name is supposed to be. I paid attention to about half of it, and I still feel absolutely no sympathy for you. I'm just gonna say that as the former vice president, but now current president of the American Ugly Bitches Association of America, which I did become president of because our former president, Melissa, finally got rid of her hump. And let me tell you, she's been walking different, literally and figuratively, ever since. I would say that I don't think that attractive people deserve basic rights because they already have so many advantages. And I will say that as an ugly person myself, I go around trying to even the playing field. That's why whenever I see an attractive person on the street, I pelt them with objects like baby shoes or like maybe tiny pebbles. One time I did throw like a dog treat at Emily Ratajkowski and she caught it in her mouth midair. It was actually kind of impressive. Some might say erotic. I would be one of those people. I'm a double minority in that I'm homely looking, but I'm also short. I also do have IBS, but I consider that, if anything, to be, you know, a privilege. My ideal world is that of Harrison Bergeron. My nickname in high school was Tapioca because everyone said that my face looked like someone threw a pair of pursed lips and squinty little eyes into a bowl of tapioca pudding. Also because I was constantly eating tapioca pudding, sort of out of the pudding cup like this, which is why everyone used to call me a lesbian as well, which to this day I'm unsure of. I want to reiterate the fact that the primary reason that I am against the attractive community is because they basically have no empathy for us. They do not hear our cries, and our cries are very loud. I know personally because I cry myself to sleep every single night, and then that's the point where my neighbor has to sort of bang up against my floor and you know, her roof. My neighbor is the name that I like to call my mother, and she hates it very much, and she reminds me all the time, you were adopted, you can't even blame me for the way that you look. And I say, God, I'm so glad that I didn't come out of your wretched, decrepit womb. So ultimately, I will reiterate my point. I don't feel bad for you. I think you should suffer more. And I can tell that those are extensions in your hair, you fake bitch.
You guys always think that we're fake, but we're not. This is real. I was naturally born this way and I can't help it, okay? Every time I walk down the street, I have to worry that I'm gonna be kidnapped and sold on the black market, okay? You don't. They don't want you. They would honestly only
That's not
kidnap
true.
you,
They would harvest my
kidnap you and
organs.
return
I
you
would be
after
great in a
3 days
sweatshop.
once they realized they weren't gonna make any money. You don't have to worry about that.
That's not true. I have almost been kidnapped numerous times by black market traffickers on account of my tiny, childlike, nimble fingers that would work fantastic assembling things in a sweatshop assembly line. So no, I'd say I also understand that experience.
What was it like to get ridiculed in high school? I just want to live vicariously through you for a second.
Well, I mean, I guess imagine everything that people said behind your back, but to your face.
No one talked behind my back. I know that for
I wouldn't be so sure about that. You have a very large back.
The only thing that happened behind my back was a man coming on it, but like, can't help that.
I'm sorry,
I actually kind of asked for it.
I'm having flashbacks to my dad. Go on. Have you had men on the street sort of run up to you and beg to be financially dominated by you? Like, you don't even have to touch them. You basically just have to swipe their credit cards, and every single time they see a charge on their credit card bill, they basically bust it out. Has that ever happened to you?
No, they would never feel comfortable enough to come up to me on the street. They're not worthy of that. They email me separately.
Have you ever had, like, women on the street sort of come up to you and hand you their firstborn child saying, like, you know, you deserve this. Like, if anything, I'm not even worthy to raise this child.
No, actually, it's quite the opposite. Women on the street usually yell at me and they say, "How dare you sleep with my husband?"
Were you sleeping with their husband?
I mean, yes, but that's not the point. I feel like you're not listening to me. I just noticed something, and that's that when I speak, people hang on to my every word. When you speak, I actually want to fall asleep within the first 5 seconds because it's so soothing and also slightly just kind of blends in with the background, and it just kind of sounds like a wolf howling in the distance, right? So what's it like to have people kind of zone out right when you speak?
Well, I mean, my first job out of vocational training school where I was trained to be a mime at the Florida Institute of Silent Performance and also Prostitution, I was actually a sort of what they used to call the personification of Ambien, where I would go in to people who are experiencing insomnia and I would just sort of talk to them about my day. Well, you seem to be waving at people that are your friends. I wouldn't know what that's like. I have colleagues and I have enemies.
What is it like to have no friends? I mean, what do you do in your free time?
Well, I will say that if the next batch of cocaine that gets shipped to whatever city you're living in is laced with fentanyl, then I think all of your friends will probably be dead within the week. And so, you know, fingers crossed that that happens. I have a lot of faith in the fentanyl dealers of the Mexican cartel. I applied for a position there in the HR department, but they rejected me. I will say that it's very nice not having friends. I've been told repeatedly that I have a sort of repugnant aura, a sort of like a haunted doll or like a signed photo of Bill Cosby. There's a sort of nothingness that emanates from me, almost like a rice cracker. And I will say I've saved so much money not having to buy people presents. I will at times sort of like crash birthday parties that I see at like Chuck E. Cheese or like the one that I'm allowed back into, so I have to travel outside of the state to go to that one. And I'll sit there with the kids while they're eating their cake and I'll say, what is it like having joy and, you know, not having severe eczema, but like exclusively on my back, and it's in the shape of a swastika for some reason, but with a question mark at the end, so you could really interpret the medical condition as like questioning anti-Semitism. And I bring this up to them and their response is always to pepper spray me.
What are your means of travel?
Horse.
You're allowed a horse? You act as the horse?
My second gig out of college, after I was the human personification of Ambien, where I would just talk to people and they'd fall asleep, I sort of live out in Amish country, and for the poor Amish people that couldn't afford a horse and buggy, I was sort of like human Uber.
That makes sense. See, the way I was always told as a kid growing up was that like the uglies, you guys kind of scurry around the subway as like you're not allowed on the subway, but you kind of scurry around as like with the fellow rats. So I always thought that was really interesting. I was like, wow, that must be so much fun. I want to experience that someday in my life. It just reminded me that little thing you did with your teeth. It kind of just like, you reminded me of a little rat, and you do have the little pokers coming out. So
I am rodent-like.
God, I would love to run wild with you little gerbils one day, but
To be fair, I feel like we can make that fantasy happen. There was a little bit of hesitation.
No.
I'm sensing that you're going back on your initial point that you want to be one of us.
Not at all. I think there might have just been a freeze at your point. I am gung-ho for the invite. Thank you so much.
Interesting. If you are so keen on being part of this lifestyle, would you mind taking off your makeup for us?
What makes you think I'm wearing any?
Well, unless you have a very specific skin condition, that definitely seems like a caked up face to me, bitch. And there you have it.
And we're back
You
on
won't
what I'm
even go
talking about.
barefaced on camera.
Ridicule?
Those crocodile tears, America. She's lying.
Never survive a day in my life. Never.
Let's get into that face-off machine like they have in that movie, Face Off, and we'll trade places if you're really about that life. And there you go, sipping from your little Twilight cup like the hypocrite that you are. I rest my case, America.
My case has been rested too, and I think you will find that there was only one winner in this debate.
Yeah, that's right. The moderator.
Who the fuck is that?
I'm not entirely sure. I don't know who runs this YouTube page.